All episodes of A Trial by Podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only. Much to their parents' dismay, neither host is a lawyer, journalist, or investigator. Just two people with microphones and Wi-Fi. All actions discussed are alleged, and all parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. For the full legal mumbo-jumbo, check the show notes.
This episode is brought to you by Blink. Blink Friday starts now with up to 65% off Blink Smart Security. Check on your pets all season long with new Blink Mini 2K Plus cameras. See your gifts arrive in head-to-toe view with Blink Video Doorbell. Ready to use right out of the box. Just unwrap Blink and go. From pet parents to jet setters to busy families, Blink Friday deals have your holidays covered. Shop now at amazon.com/blink.
'Tis the season for all your holiday favorites, like A Very Jonas Christmas Movie and Home Alone on Disney+.
Should I burn down the joint? I don't think so.
Then Hulu has National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
We're all in for a very big Christmas treat.
All of these and more streaming this holiday season. And right now, save big with our special Black Friday offer. Bundle Disney Plus and Hulu for just $4.99 a month for 1 year. Savings compared to current regular monthly price. Ends 12/1. Offer for ad-supported Disney Plus Hulu bundle only. Then $12.99 a month or then current regular monthly price. 18 plus terms apply.
Gold Bond knows that every glow-up starts with radiant skin. So choose Gold Bond Cocoa Butter Glow for a body lotion that's clinically shown to give you smooth, glowing skin. But don't just take our word for it. 88% of people who tried Gold Bond Cocoa Butter Glow saw glowing skin in just 1 day. Gold Bond Cocoa Butter Glow. Nourish your skin. Reveal your glow. Buy now on Amazon.
Meet the computer you can talk to. With Copilot on Windows, working, creating, and collaborating is as easy as talking. Got writer's block? Share your screen with Copilot Vision to help spark inspiration, and use Copilot Voice to have a conversation and brainstorm ideas. Or maybe you need some tech help. With Copilot Vision, Copilot sees what you see. Let Copilot talk you through step-by-step guidance so you can master new apps, games, and skills faster. Try now at windows.com/Copilot.
On the evening of March 26, 2020, in the height of the pandemic, 23-year-old Cyarah Vince called her mother, Tamara, to tell her about this chicken that she cooked for dinner that she was so proud of. The two had a short conversation and ended the call by telling each other that they loved one another. And then they hung up. Just hours later, Cyarah's life would be brutally taken by her own boyfriend. This is the story of Cyarah Vince. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I am your host, Kelsey, and I have not only a special episode for you today, but I have a special month planned out, and I'm very excited to tell you guys about it. So we're going to dive kind of right into it. Today, I am going to tell you the story of Cyarah Vince. And this story has become very near and dear to my heart, so I would like to kind of explain the background. So I knew that I wanted to do some sort of fundraising campaign in the month of December. And I specifically was looking for some sort of domestic violence-based charity to support it, because to me, those are the stories that really touch my heart, and I wanted to do something to help and use the podcast to raise money for a great cause. And so I put out on Instagram, hey, if you guys have any suggestions on charities I should choose, I'm kind of thinking of doing like the local women's shelter, but looking into other ideas. And my mom texted me and she's like, oh, you have to talk to Tamara and cover her daughter's case, and they have a foundation. So I got in touch with Tamara. Tamara is, of course, the mother of Cyarah Vince, and Tamara and my mom actually worked together for years. And I remember when what happened to Cyarah happened, I remember hearing about it from my mom, but I never met them in person. And I've had the chance to get to know Tamara over the last couple weeks, and she is just such a special, special person. And so was Cyarah. And Cyarah's story has really, really touched me, and I really think her story is going to touch you. And the Cyarah Vince Foundation, which was started by Tamara and some of her friends, is what we are going, and I say we, all of us together, we are going to fundraise money during the month of December to donate to the Cyarah Vince Foundation. So first, I'm going to tell you about what the foundation does, and then I will tell you about what we are going to do to raise the money, okay? So the Cyarah Vince Foundation is dedicated to breaking the cycle of domestic violence through education, awareness, and community support. Throughout the year, the foundation hosts events designed to start life-saving conversations, teaching families, teens, and community members how to recognize the warning signs of abuse and what truly defines a healthy relationship. Each year, the foundation awards a scholarship to a graduating Midview High School senior. And actually, last year was the first year that they did it. And I loved the way that they gave out this scholarship because it doesn't just help the one person who wins the scholarship, because applicants are required to write an essay describing what a healthy relationship looks like. And this is an exercise that not only honors Cyarah's legacy, but also encourages young people to think critically about boundaries, respect, and safety long before they enter adulthood. And I think it's such a creative way to get young people and get teenagers thinking about what a healthy relationship looks like and what are the warning signs or red flags of an unhealthy and possibly even abusive relationship. Now, they also hold a yearly benefit right around Cyarah's birthday, and they are going to have one in 2026. It will be Saturday, April 11th. So if there are any local listeners, keep an eye out. I will be posting about that, and I will be in attendance. So you have to pay a ticket price, and they raise money and also just have some speakers to not only spread awareness about domestic violence stories, but to educate the people in attendance on domestic violence issues. Now, in the past, the Cyarah Vince Foundation has also supported Lorain County Safe Harbor, and according to their website, they are, quote, a collaborative community effort to provide a responsive system of care for victims while also raising awareness about domestic violence, end quote. So if you are local to the Cleveland area, you may have heard of the Genesis House Shelter that is run by Lorain County Safe Harbor, and in the past, the Cyarah Vince Foundation has supported their work and vice versa as well. Some members of Lorain County Safe Harbor attend the Cyarah Vince Foundation's yearly benefit and all of those sorts of things. So these are two great organizations. And I am actually going to have some people from Lorain County Safe Harbor on the podcast later this month to answer some questions about domestic violence issues. You know, what do people need to do if they need to get out of a relationship? What can we do if we see one of our friends or one of our loved ones in an abusive relationship? And they are going to be here to offer an expert opinion and just some expertise, because I feel like it's not something I'm super knowledgeable about. So I want to make sure that any advice that you guys might be taking from this podcast is from people who know what they're talking about. So if you guys have any specific questions that you would like me to ask them, this episode is going to come out before I interview them. So please let me know in the comments or shoot us an email at atrialbypodcast@gmail.com. Now, with everything that the Cyarah Vince Foundation does, these efforts create a lasting impact. And their goal is to educate the next generation, strengthen our communities, and support survivors who deserve safety, dignity, and a chance to heal. And in my conversations with Tamara, one of the things she truly stressed is her goal of the foundation and of telling Cyarah's story is so she can help save lives. Because she really stressed to me that her daughter did not know what was going to happen to her. She did not ever see it coming. And her daughter knew some of the signs of domestic violence because Tamara herself had experienced domestic violence in the past. So she educated her daughter about this when she was young, when she was a teenager. And so Tamara's goal is really to share Cyarah's story, share what the red flags and the warning signs were in hindsight, so we can help other young women in particular, but anyone, recognize these warning signs and understand that just because you think someone would never hurt you doesn't mean that it's true. Now, at the end of the episode, I am going to share some clips of Tamara talking about the foundation and really what her goals are and the purpose for her of sharing Cyarah's story, but I'll let her tell you guys in her own words. I was very lucky to interview Tamara and her partner, Catherine, and I did truly enjoy speaking with them. Obviously, the subject matter here was difficult. It's not a happy subject matter, but it was such a meaningful conversation that I got to have with them. We spoke for 3 hours, and I'm really, really excited to share that conversation with you guys and share Cyarah's story with you guys as well. And before I kind of tell you about what we're going to do to raise funds for the Cyarah Vince Foundation, I just want to give you some context. So Tamara is obviously Cyarah's mother, and then her partner, Catherine. You're going to hear her voice throughout this as well. I'll be kind of narrating the story and then putting in clips of them speaking. For the most part, it's going to be Tamara. You're going to hear Catherine just here and there. And one of the things that you're going to hear Tamara talking about, and I think you'll hear it when you hear Catherine speaking about this, is Catherine has been an incredible and supportive partner to Tamara. And I just think they are two very special people. And I want Catherine's part of supporting Tamara to be recognized as well. So how are we going to be raising money for the Cyarah Vince Foundation? Well, from December 1st to December 31st. That is the time frame. That is when we are raising the money. So this started yesterday because you are hearing this episode on December 2nd. So hopefully I've already posted about it on social media. If not, I will get to it very shortly. But we're going to raise money in a few different ways. Number one, I will be donating half of my ad revenue that I make during the month of December from the 1st to the 31st, 2025. For that same time period, I'll also be donating half of my TikTok creator revenue as well. So any money I get from views on TikTok, that's going to be a large portion of the donation. Now, I only get paid from Spotify for the ad revenue and TikTok, like it's kind of like late the next month. So I'll probably get paid out for those in January, like between January 15th to January 20th, and then I will aggregate everything together and make the donation in one lump sum so I can share with you guys how much money we were able to raise together. So here's a couple of free ways that you can help support the Cyarah Vince Foundation. First of all, because I'm donating the ad revenue, if you just let a couple extra ads play through, now I'm not asking you to listen to every single one. I know that sucks. But if you let a couple ads play through while you're listening to our episodes this month, it'll be for any episode you listen to through our whole catalog that'll be donated, not just this one. So let a couple extra ads play through. That'll boost our ad revenue. That means we can donate more. You can watch our TikTok videos and share those videos. Whatever we can do to get those views up is going to, help us raise money as well. On top of that, we are also going to donate 100% of profit from merchandise. So just to be clear, I have to pay for the merchandise, so that portion gets taken out. But any profit I make on top of that for the merchandise is going to be donated, 100% of it. So I'm super excited about that. It's a great time to do it with the holidays coming up. Send this to your boyfriend. Tell him to buy you a t-shirt, whatever it may be, a glass cup, a bumper sticker. I think we have some great stuff on the store that you guys will enjoy. And the link, if you just click the link tree in our show notes, you can find the merch on our website. Just go to our website, atrialbypodcast.com, and click on the merch. And we also created a couple of custom tees to support Cyarah's foundation as well. So they say, love shouldn't hurt, love should heal. And they've got a purple ribbon for domestic violence. And then they say, very small, in loving memory of Cyarah, Cece. Vince Cece was her nickname. So you guys can definitely check those out. I priced those couple of t-shirts a little bit higher than normal just to make the profit margin higher, meaning we can donate more money. And the last way that we're going to raise money for the foundation is through direct donations. Now, I know Christmas time is coming. I know that not everyone has extra money to give, and that's totally okay too. But if you do, and if you feel so inclined, you can donate to the Cyarah Vince Foundation at cyarahvincefoundation.org. I am going to have the link to the foundation in the show notes. It's also going to be the top link on our link tree during the month of December, so you guys can easily make a donation there. But if you don't have extra money, that's okay too. Let a couple extra ads run through. Even if you just do your normal amount, you're still going to be supporting. So yeah, with that being said, I am very excited about this month. We are going to cover Cyarah's case today, but all throughout the month of December, I am going to be focusing on stories of domestic violence. And don't worry, every single one of these stories is extremely different from the other. And my goal was to pick stories that have different learning lessons in them and are also going to be different enough that you guys are still engaged and you don't feel like you're hearing the same story. I'm also going to be dropping bonus episodes this month. Why? Couple of reasons. More bonus episodes means more ad revenue, number one. Number two, I am long-winded and I have become emotionally attached to these cases and to these victims and sharing their stories. And so I think almost all of them are going to end up being two-parters because I can't help myself. And number three, I'm a masochist, okay? I am doubling my workload this month. Even with the holidays coming up, and I planned this last minute. I literally started planning this entire campaign mid to late November, and I felt like I don't really have enough time to do this. And then I'm like, you know what? Stop making excuses, Kelsey. Do something good. So here we are doing something good. Thank you guys for listening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to do something like this. This is what I am doing this month. To me, this is why I want to do this is what it's all about. This is meaningful. This gives me a sense of purpose, and I'm really, really excited. So I couldn't do any of this without you guys listening. So thank you so much for that. So with that being said, today's episode is going to be a little bit of a different style. It's going to be less script heavy. I really wanted to share as much of what Tamara had to say as possible, so I'll be putting those clips in as well. But yeah, let's get into it. Cyarah was a beloved daughter, a loyal friend. She was a cancer survivor, and she was just a young woman with a big heart and big dreams. She was ambitious. She was adventurous. She loved to travel. She loved to laugh and have a good time. She was extremely thoughtful. She would write her mom all of these handwritten cards, and she even gifted her mom one year a jar full of a bunch of little notes with compliments on them. And I have some photos of some of Cyarah's journal writings and handwriting and these cards that she would make. And I'll share those on social media because I think it just gives you such a sense of how sweet and thoughtful this girl was. Now, her mother, Tamara, who you are about to hear from, actually had Cyarah very young. She was a teenager. She was a single mom. And the two were exceptionally close because of this.
Yeah, I actually was pregnant the summer before my senior year. And I continued to go to school and have a job, part-time job. And then toward the end, I was at the time in an abusive relationship with her father. And so
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. And I shared that with Cyarah. I didn't hide that. And I chose to quit my job to stay in school because it was important for me to graduate, right? I can't have a daughter if I don't graduate. I have to lead by example. So I actually I lived with her father my senior year, and I actually moved out this summer or on Valentine's Day, and she was born on April 7th, which was Easter Sunday. And I moved in with my father to save her life because I was in the hospital 3 different times with a fever. And it was all stress-induced because I was in an abusive relationship. So I moved in with my father. I graduated high school, and I did take him back once. I'm not going to, say I'm perfect either, right? And then I realized that you can't change someone. I needed to protect my daughter and protect me, and I got out. I never looked back. And so, and then 6 months after I graduated high school, when Cyarah was just 9 months, not 8.5 months old, I got a job at Continental Airlines. And I got that job because I wanted to make my daughter proud of me.
Now, Tamara told me that when she was pregnant with Cyarah, she knew 3 things before she even knew the gender.
When I was pregnant, I knew that she was going to be my only child. I knew that she was going to be a girl, and I knew she was going to be beautiful. And I, always thought that one was enough. I don't know if I would have changed it if I knew that now I'm going to be, I'm not going to have a child to tell me Happy Mother's Day, or I'm not going to be a grandma. But yeah, I always knew she was going to be my only child.
Now, like I said, because they were kind of close in age and Cyarah was a single mom, they were just best friends. They weren't just mother-daughter. They were friends. They truly loved each other, truly enjoyed just spending so much time together. And they had this phrase that they shared.
Our thing was always, I always used to say, I loved you first. And she said, I loved you first. And I was like, no, I knew you were my belly first. And she's like, no, I knew I was in your belly first. So it was always this ongoing tit for tat,
Now, Cyarah was born on April 7th, 1996 in Elyria, Ohio. And while she spent most of her life in Ohio, she did move around, eventually living in San Francisco for a bit because her mother worked for the airlines. So her mother has worked in the Cleveland area, worked in San Francisco, in Seattle, and I believe also Washington, D.C. area as well. And because of that, Cyarah got to grow up traveling a lot. And this was something that you're going to hear is such a big part of who she was. She was super adventurous, and she just really wanted to see the world. Now, as a child, Cyarah was a very happy kid, but at age 7, she faced something unimaginable. she was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Cyarah had to undergo more than 2 years of chemotherapy. But despite everything, she stayed remarkably positive, and she really bonded with her doctors and nurses, especially the nurses. She truly looked up to them, and this whole experience inspired her dream to one day become a pediatric oncology nurse and help children the way that her own medical team helped her.
She, at the age of 7, she got diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Its short abbreviation is ALL. And she really got close to her oncologist, her nurse oncologist. And so she decided herself that she wanted to be a pediatric nurse oncologist so she could help the kids that went through what she went through and be an amazing impact to their life like her nurses were to her.
Now, Tamara explained to me that Cyarah doesn't really remember much about this time in her life, much about the cancer, besides the memories that are told to her from other people and pictures, videos, things like that.
She only knows really what pictures tell her and what I tell her. She still had her good spirits about it. She had some rough days. I remember the first day that it took me 2 weeks. Well, we were in the hospital for 10 days, and then it took me like another week after that to tell her that she was going to lose her hair.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was something that we always did together. And I always, put her hair in pigtails and braids and clips. And, that was our thing. And like, how do you tell a 7-year-old she's going to lose her blonde, beautiful hair, curls?
According to Tamara, this whole experience just made Cyarah very empathetic, very thoughtful, very caring of others. She experienced some bullying at school because of the leukemia. Kids were literally making fun of her, saying it was contagious, which is, kids are horrible. They genuinely scare me. They have no boundaries, which obviously is so horrible, picturing this little girl going through leukemia and people are bullying her over it. But it just really inspired her to treat people with kindness, and for the people who maybe are new to school or didn't have many friends or maybe were being bullied, to show them kindness and empathy and give them friendship. And this is something that Cyarah carried throughout her life. It didn't just stay in childhood. On top of being caring, Cyarah just had this bright, effervescent personality. She had an infectious laughter, and everyone who knew her said that she was just able to put a smile on anyone's face. Now, when I asked Tamara if she could kind of tell me about who her daughter was, she explained to me that there were 2 Cyarahs. There was Cyarah before this relationship with her murderer, Altomare, and then there was Cyarah after she entered this relationship.
Well, there's Cyarah before this guy and there's Cyarah after, right? And those are 2 different Cyarahs. Before this, she would, go hang out with her friends. She would go hang out at their house. When I was in town, she always was like, "Mom, where are you at? I'm on the way." And we would hang out all night, right? We would, sometimes we would play games. We would go on hikes. We would, when I lived there, I had a dog. She would go on walks with me. She would help me in the garden. She loved to pick strawberries because I had a big strawberry patch. She liked music. She would, when I lived in California, we went to like 3 different concerts. We went to Faith Hill, Tim McGraw. We went to Sublime. She loved because it said Eugene, Oregon, Cleveland, Ohio, and San Francisco, all in the same song. I was born and raised in Eugene, Oregon. So and so her grandma and we have cousins and aunts and uncles that live there. She loved that song and loved Sublime. So she definitely loved music and dancing. That was just her. She could just like dance or just, she always was doing this. And then the Cyarah after, they went to raves. Raves was their thing. That's unfortunately with that comes the drug scene, right? I guess.
Grabbing the holidays by the boughs with Duluth. Step 1, hire a mall Santa to handle snow removal.
Ho, ho, ho! My sciatica.
Step 2, hit Duluth Trading and load up on fire hose pants, buck naked underwear, pocket pack bibs, free swinging flannel, and all kinds of ingenious gear you won't find anywhere else. Grab the holidays by the boughs and shop Duluth Trading, online and in store.
Say hello to the all-new Alexa Plus and see how Alexa can do so much more for you. Need tickets to see your favorite artist? Craving your comfort restaurant? Just sit back, relax, and talk naturally. Alexa's on it. It learns your style, anticipates what's next, and makes it happen across Echo, Fire TV, and more. Learn more at amazon.com/new Alexa.
Everyone wants the Emirates NBA Cup.
And things are heating up.
30 teams started. Bang! But only 8 have advanced to the single elimination knockout rounds. To survive, they'll have to be hungry, relentless, ruthless.
Are you kidding me?
They all want the cup, but only one team can claim it. Who will capture the cup? Emirates NBA Cup knockout rounds begin December 9th on Prime.
Adobe Acrobat Studio, so brand new. Show me all the things PDFs can do. Do your work with ease and speed. PDF Spaces is all you need. Do hours of research in an instant with key insights from an AI assistant. Pick a template with a click. Now your prezzo looks super slick. Close that deal? Yeah, you won. Do that, doing that, did that, done. Now you can do that with Acrobat. Now you can do that with the all-new Acrobat. It's time to do your best work with the all-new Adobe Acrobat Studio.
Hearing this before and after idea and hearing about how bubbly and adventurous and all of these things that Cyarah was before this relationship, I think this is something that we can all relate to a different extent, maybe. I think we've all seen a friend, or maybe it's been us, who has entered a relationship and it just dimmed them. It kind of drained them of who they were. They stopped focusing on their dreams, their goals, what made them happy, and they seem to only be focusing on this relationship that they're in. And by the way, I think this happens in relationships that aren't abusive as well. Sometimes if you're just in the wrong relationship that is perfectly normal, not abusive, I think this can happen as well. So I think we all know that feeling. We've all seen it before. And thinking about who Cyarah was before, she was just so thoughtful. She would make all of these custom cards for people. Like, instead of just buying a card at the store, she would really put thought into it and make these kind of like artsy, creative little cards with drawings and long, sweet notes on them. And again, I'm going to share some pictures of those on social media.
It just, it just speaks volumes of how Cyarah loved to make people's day. Cyarah loved making cards. I would have to buy cardstock. And these cards were like professional, like great cards. I'll send you some pictures of them. But she made them for family and friends and me for Mother's Day and for birthdays. And, she just really loved to make people's day. When she was 16 for Mother's Day, she made me one of those cards that I'll send you a picture of later. And she also made me a mason jar full of compliments of how she thought of me and our relationship, right? Like, she put one was like, you're my cheerleader. One, you're my best friend. I love your hugs. And she, like almost 100 of these compliments that she put on construction paper and folded up and put into a mason jar for me. And I still have it.
Cyarah had a very close-knit group of a couple friends that were like her best friends. They were her rocks. But on top of this, like I said, Cyarah was very close with her family and her family's friends. Tamara explained to me that there were a handful of Tamara's friends that really treated Cyarah like one of their own, and really they were the village. You know what I mean? But Tamara was her best friend. They had always been like that.
She was my best friend. We were so close. We grew up together because our ages were so close, right? We were almost like sisters. And I think that was one of her things that she put in her jar. But we were like super close. She was beautiful. She was my only child. And she just was amazing. She was thoughtful. She had the best personality. She wanted to be helpful to everyone around her. She was a joy to be around. And I just miss her so much,
Now, when Cyarah was in high school, she worked at a nursing home. And Cyarah loved her elderly patients. She loved taking care of people. She loved brightening their day. And she just had this natural gift for caregiving, whether it was elderly people at this nursing home that she worked at for a while, or whether it was the kids that she taught sailing to at a summer camp in San Francisco. These people, these children, these patients, they all loved Cyarah. And one time, one of the nursing home patients even asked Cyarah for Tamara's phone number and gave Tamara a call just to talk to her about her daughter.
She worked at Wesleyan Village in Elyria, just an example. And she always came home talking about this lady. And she's like, Mom, she wants your phone number. Is it okay if I give it to her? I was like, okay. So she called me and she said, you did an amazing job raising her. She is so nice and kind to me in the nursing home. And she's like, I don't see that very often. And it just melted my heart that she impacted other people's lives. Another thing that she did was I always told her to be nice to the new kid because everyone deserves to have a friend. And so I found out that one of my coworkers' kids was changing schools from St. Mary's to Midview. And I said, go find him. He needs a friend. He's the new kid in school. And it just so happens they had a class together. She wouldn't tell him that I knew his dad. His dad had died recently, and that's why he switched schools. She didn't want to make him sad at school, so she just was his friend. And she was his first friend at Midview. And to this day, because I asked if I could tell his story, we have a relationship. I can pick up the phone, call him, or vice versa. And he still remembers that day that Cyarah friended him, and it meant so much to him.
Now, family and friends described Cyarah as, quote, joy in motion, end quote. First of all, I love that term. I've never heard that before, joy in motion. But when you see videos of Cyarah, there's a lot of videos of her, like from her Snapchat, of her just like recording herself singing in the car. And when you see these videos, like you get exactly what they mean, joy in motion. And the word that I thought of when I would watch the videos is effervescent. She has this effervescence to her, like this light, airy, bright feeling about her. And you can just tell, like, she just brought so much joy to any room that she walked into. Now, like I said, Cyarah graduated from Midview High School. And this is why the Cyarah Vince Foundation picks a Midview High School student for the scholarship. But after she graduated high school, she decided she was going to take some time. She's got an adventurous spirit and she's young. She wants to see the world. So that's what she did. She started traveling widely in her late teens, even before she graduated high school, but also in her early 20s.
So from the age of 16 to 21, she went to Paris. Wow. I took her to Munich and we took a train down to Austria. We went on the Sound of Music tour.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, it was a childhood favorite movie of mine that I made her watch, and so she learned to like it as well. And so we went and did the tour. I took her to Barcelona. I took her to Cabo San Lucas, and we went parasailing. That was for her 20th birthday. Awesome. Her 21st, I took her to Hawaii. She went to Hawaii, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. She loved beaches. I equally love beaches, and she loved, exploring new beaches.
And on top of this travel, it wasn't just about seeing the world. It was about experiencing different things all over. And actually, after Cyarah passed, her mother discovered these bucket lists that Cyarah had put together. And she had already checked off a lot of items on these bucket lists.
I didn't know it until afterwards that Cyarah left 2 bucket lists. And these are like some really tense bucket lists. Example, like swimming with sharks, or I don't have them in front of me, but I have them in my phone. I don't have any intentions of going skydiving, right? But before she left California the last time, when she was at the summer of youth sailing, she's like, Mom, I can't leave until I do some of these things on my bucket list. And she didn't share the bucket list with me. I hadn't seen it until afterwards. But on the bucket list was, we went to Yosemite. She had to go to Glass Beach. We had to go on a road trip to Hollywood. There was some ceramic stairs in San Francisco that had a view of the ocean that we had to go find in the middle of a neighborhood in San Francisco. She spent a lot of time on researching. She had so much ambition and so many dreams. So now me and my friends, our goal is to check off her bucket list for her.
Now, for a bit, Cyarah did move to California, to the San Francisco area, because Tamra's job had transferred out there. And during this time, she worked at a San Francisco Bay Area yacht and sailing club, which I can't imagine what life is like at the San Francisco Bay Area yacht and sailing club. Even just working there would be awesome. Going there would be awesome. I have no idea what it's like, but that's a whole lifestyle I've never even thought about. But she worked there as a camp counselor, and she basically spent the summers teaching children how to sail in the San Francisco Bay. And this is as a teen. I think it was late teens. What a cool freaking job to have. That is so cool. And I feel like I'd be scared to sail on these little sailboats. But she was responsible for these kids, and she loved these kids. And these kids loved her. They were naturally drawn to her.
kids gravitated toward her, Kelsey. I just can't even, she worked a lot of serving jobs, right? And she loved making those kids that came in make their day. And then the parents would be like, oh my gosh. And, she would get a good tip out of it, right? But like, she just really loved making kids' days and helping the parents with the kids.
Now, eventually after moving to San Francisco, Cyarah decided she wanted to come back to her hometown in Ohio. And so she moved back to Ohio while Tamara was still on the West Coast. But still, the two maintained a very tight bond. They talked on the phone almost daily. They would have long conversations. And like I said, Tamara worked for the airlines, so she was able to fly and visit Cyarah pretty often, and they spent a lot of time together. On top of this, they even took regular mother-daughter trips, especially for each other's birthdays. So every year for both of their birthdays, they would go on a trip together. And I absolutely love that. My mom also works for the airlines. That's how she knows Tamara. That was something that we didn't do every year for birthdays, but we did a lot. We've done a lot of mother-daughter trips, and that is something that I hold near and dear to my heart. And I know that Cyarah probably did as well. So in late 2017, Cyarah moves back to Ohio, and soon after returning to Lorain County, she reconnected with someone she knew from childhood, a man named Austin Altomare. So they reconnect and eventually start dating.
So they met actually at Kindergarten Village when they were 5 years old. They didn't go to the same home elementary school, but to get full-time kindergarten, I signed her up for that because I was single mom at the time, and they were in the same class. I didn't know him from Adam. I look back, I have her of some random 5-year-olds in her class that he's in, but I didn't know that they had crushes on each other back then. And then fast forward, when she comes back from California the second time, she reconnects with him somehow. They had ran into each other, I think, a few times maybe before that. I don't know. They were the same age, right? So Elyria, Midview, it's not too far-fetched for them to somehow hang out together, right? And so I think somehow they had, maybe met a couple times before throughout the years. So they met, reconnected, and then that's how that last relationship started with them, is her coming back from California. And shortly after, she ran into him.
Cyarah's family and friends were happy to see her settling back into her life in Ohio. She was happy to be back. They were happy for her, and she seemed happy in this new relationship at first. But no one could have predicted the dark turn this new relationship would take. Now, there were no public reports of domestic violence during the years that Cyarah and Austin dated. However, later reflections suggest that there may have been some subtle warning signs. And I think subtle is the key word here, because we're going to talk about, at the time, there were a lot of small, subtle signs that separately could very fairly be written off as, oh, it's just a little immature, just a little bit out of the control, maybe toxic a little bit, but not abusive. But it's when you put them all together, in hindsight in this case, that we can see a clear picture of abuse happening. And this is what Tamara wants you guys to learn from her daughter's story, is to not write off the small things, to not write off the subtle signs, to not write off the controlling behavior, to not write these things off. All of these things should be adding together over time. So don't write one off and then ignore it moving forward. If you start seeing these subtle signs, these small red flags, pay attention to them. Keep them in the bank. Let them all add up together. So let's talk a little bit about who Austin was. Now, looking back, I'm going to tell you everything that there is to know about this guy, but please keep in mind that Cyarah didn't know all of this. She probably didn't know the details, or she only knew what he told her. It's not very clear on exactly what she knew and didn't know, but he's not a good guy. We are going to talk about there are drugs involved in this story. Both Austin and Cyarah were using them the night of Cyarah's death. But when you read about this case in some of the news articles, the way that they tell this story, and I don't know if this is purposeful or not, is like, oh, they were doing drugs, he went crazy, and he killed her. And, oh, it's just the drugs. But if it weren't for all those drugs making him crazy, maybe this wouldn't have happened. And I don't think that's the story here. Of course, the drugs are part of the story. We're going to talk about the drugs, obviously. But the drugs aren't the end-all, be-all thing here. And that is very clear to me when reading about the relationship and talking to Tamara about the relationship and his past history. Drugs did not do this to Cyarah. Austin did this to Cyarah. Now, with the drugs, for the most part, we know that they both smoked weed together. It's a very normal thing for people in their 20s. It's now legal in Ohio. To me, no big deal for people to be smoking weed. Now, they were interested in kind of like rave culture, things like that. So when I talk about them using drugs, specifically Austin for the most part, you know, from what I've read online, he didn't seem to be like an addict in that he's using drugs on a daily basis. It seemed more that he was using party drugs for the purpose of partying. Things like MDMA, psychedelics, stuff like that. And that's where it sounds like Cyarah would participate in some of these every once in a while. Now, by March of 2020, Austin and Cyarah were living together in a second floor apartment on East 29th Street in Lorain. They even had a dog together, a pet pit bull. Now, friends would later testify that Austin frequently used drugs, like I said, like LSD, and this news report said other narcotics. Now, Austin also had a criminal record, which is not surprising. In the past, he had been arrested for robbery, assault, domestic violence, drug possession, and a DUI. Now, he was not convicted on a lot of these, and I'm going to get into the details, but that's just to give you an overview of this guy's alleged rap sheet. So, first of all, let's talk about the domestic violence charge, because, of course, that's probably the one that piqued your interest the most. So that domestic violence charge was in relation to the abuse of his former girlfriend and the mother of his 2 children. Okay? He was arrested for domestic violence against the mother of his 2 children, his ex-girlfriend. Now, these charges were later dropped, and he was never convicted on that charge. So these charges were alleged. And here's the thing, Austin did tell Cyarah about this incident, about these charges that were against him. They had been dropped already when they started dating, but of course he downplays the whole situation. And he basically said that none of it was his fault and it was all made up and his ex was basically just crazy. That's the line of, oh, I had this crazy ex that called the police on me, that kind of thing. And here's the thing, ladies, and especially young ladies, especially if you're dating online and you're meeting someone random that you don't know any of their friends, you don't know people who know them, look them up online. I'm going to talk about some resources at the end where you can like look up people's records to see if they have any arrest records or anything like that. But Google them, look them up online. You need to know about these things. You need to be asking them about them. And if you see a domestic violence charge, I'm not saying it never happens to where, you know, women might call the police lying and making up stories that aren't true. I'm sure that has happened. I'm sure it will happen again in the future. What I'm telling you is that is very rare. And what's more likely is that if he was accused of domestic violence, that you should be very wary of this person. And I think it's hard when you get to know this person and they're kind and they're loving and they're sweet and they say, I just had this crazy ex. It's like, I see why you could believe them because there are crazy exes out there. Don't get me wrong. But this should be a major, major red flag. And it should be something that you take very seriously. And I'm not saying that Cyarah didn't, but it's just something that I wanted to put in everybody's mind.
Like his record, he had a DV charge. She told me that he had a DV charge from his kid's mom and that she dropped it. And, oh, mom, it was nothing. Oh, it was her fault. You know, like she stuck up for him. And I was like, Cyarah, that's not good. That, like, what are you doing? And she defended him.
And to me, that shows you how manipulative these abusers can be. Because at first, it's like you see this great side of someone. And so you hear that. And I can see how you could hear, oh, and the charge was dropped. And maybe you've heard all these stories about the crazy ex-girlfriend or the, you know, the mother of the kids who's so crazy. And you haven't seen the worst sides of this person yet. So where, of course, you would believe
And that's exactly what she said, that his ex was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And she may be crazy, but I mean, something happened to where she called and pressed charges and then dropped them, right? Something happened.
Now, Tamara obviously was extremely wary of Austin after hearing about this alleged domestic violence. Now, like I said in the beginning, Tamara herself is a survivor of domestic abuse. And she was always very open with Cyarah when she was younger. She wanted to share her experience with domestic violence with Cyarah as a way of teaching her daughter what a healthy relationship should look like and what it shouldn't look like. And that's one of the reasons we chose for the shirt that we put on the merch site for Cyarah. It says, love shouldn't hurt, love should heal. And I think that's an overall encompassing factor. If you're in a relationship that is causing you, and I'm not just talking about physical pain, emotional pain, if that is the majority of your relationship, if you find it regularly emotionally painful, that's a sign that something's not right there. Now, it might not necessarily be abuse. It might just be that you're not in the right relationship. But you need to be questioning, does it cross over into the line of abuse?
And it hide that I was in abusive relationships. I talked to her about it. And that's what makes me just melt, breaks my heart even more, because it's not like I didn't talk to her about unhealthy relationships.
So while Tamara didn't really understand what Cyarah necessarily saw in this kid, Cyarah's an adult at this point. She needs to make her own decisions. Obviously, she saw a different side to him than what we are going to present to you today. And that's what I want you to remember is I'm telling you all the horrible things about this guy. This is not how an abuser presents. So I don't want you to hear all these horrible things and say, oh, well, this guy I'm dating kind of sucks in some ways, but he doesn't seem so horrible like Austin. And that's the thing is, Austin didn't seem so horrible. He seemed loving and caring and like someone Cyarah wanted to be in a relationship with. At least at first, that's how he seemed. But still, Cyarah was young, she was smart, she was beautiful, she was adventurous, she was kind, she was generous, she was loving. But Austin, in reality, he was none of these things. He maybe presented himself as being these things, but he was none of these things. First of all, when you see the pair together, it was like seeing Beauty and the Beast. And I'm going to leave it at that. Now, the more that I tell you about Austin, the more you will see that, again, he's not any of the good qualities that Cyarah has. He's not kind. He's not generous. He's not caring. I mean, take those assault and robbery charges, for example. None of that is kind, generous, or caring. Now, while these assault and robbery charges were later dropped, he was never convicted of these. Here is what allegedly happened. So in September of 2016, he and a 20-year-old friend of his allegedly beat and robbed a 51-year-old man. This was allegedly a homeless man, is what I read. They stole a whole $28 of cash from him, his cell phone, which they destroyed, and his car keys. And they never even got the car, by the way. They just took the keys and $28 in cash from this man who literally does not have a home and is living on the streets. And while there were charges pressed against Austin and this other kid, there were actually 4 people allegedly involved in this incident. There was $28 stolen, and there were 4 people who were allegedly involved in this.
And now a message from McAfee.
Your package couldn't be delivered.
You owe thousands in unpaid tolls.
You want a free gift.
If texts like these sound familiar, McAfee can help. McAfee automatically identifies text and email scams as well as AI-generated audio to help you stay safe. If they're faking it, they're not making it past us. Get award-winning scam detection today. McAfee.com/keepitreal.
Hi, it's Eva Longoria, and let's be real. After 40, we should ask for more from our skincare. I swear by Revitalift Triple Power Moisturizer by L'Oreal Paris. With vitamin C, pro-retinol, and hyaluronic acid, it reduces my wrinkles, firms, and brightens. And it's not a procedure. It's just a hardworking moisturizer.
Revitalift Triple Power Moisturizer by L'Oreal Paris. Grab it today in fragrance-free or with SPF 30. Available at your local Walmart.
I am so excited for this spa day. Candles lit, music on, hot tub warm and ready. And then my chronic hives come back. Again, in the middle of my spa day. What a wet blanket. Looks like another spell of itchy red skin. If you have chronic spontaneous urticaria, or CSU, there is a different treatment option. Hives during my next spa day? Not if I can help it. Learn more at treatmyhives.com.
So you're gonna use $7 each. And I don't know the extent of the involvement of the other 2 because no charges were pressed against them. So like, let's say at most, the 2 who had charges, let's say they split it between the 2 of them. They did this for $14 each. Beat up a 51-year-old man who was living on the streets for $14 each. Are you fucking kidding me? I apologize for my French, but what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? And I don't know what Cyarah knew of this incident, if she knew about it at all. I don't believe that Tamara knew about this at the time. I believe she learned about this after Cyarah's death. But this is concerning. I mean, this is red flag behavior. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't want to be dating people involved in this type of thing. You really don't. This is obviously a violent person. Allegedly, because we don't know. He was never convicted. The charges were dropped. This is all allegedly. But still, even if Cyarah because again, I don't know if Cyarah knew about this, but I don't believe Tamara did. Even without this information, Tamara got the vibe. She already had her concerns about Austin. Tamara's living across the country, but she started to notice some warning signs. And they weren't even necessarily from Austin himself at first, but just changes that she noticed in Cyarah. Tamara had explained to me that Cyarah was the kind of girl who truly lit up a room, who really, really shined. And like that clip I played for you, she kind of described that there were these two versions of Cyarah. There was Cyarah before and there was Cyarah after. And to me, it sounded like the Cyarah after was a dimmed version of Cyarah, a less bright version of the girl that her friends and family knew and loved. But while no one has ever come forward saying that Cyarah confided in them about physical or emotional abuse from Austin, in hindsight, the signs were there. There was at least emotional abuse, coercive controlling behavior going on. And at most, there are some things that point to possible physical abuse. So Cyarah began to withdraw from the things and the people that she loved. She seemed to be sacrificing her own wants and needs for Austin's sake, for what Austin wanted and needed. And he seemed to be slowly controlling her. And this controlling behavior escalated over time, leaving Cyarah more and more isolated from her friends and family.
So when I came into town, he limited the time that she could hang out with me. Red flag, right? Like, she's like, even she said, I'm with my mom. You know, like, I'm not out with just, anybody. I'm with my mom. Like, I'll be home when I can. And I did hear her stand up to him. And I did hear her, like, talk crap about him. Like, what's his big deal? Like, why do I have to run home? And yeah, so what? I've been with you all day, So she did stand up to him to that when I was in town. But he didn't like that. He I feel like did her from her friends. He broke a handful of phones. She kept going through phone numbers. I remember she was working at Great Road Tavern a couple months before this happened. It was winter. And I call her phone and he has it. And she's driving to Cleveland with no cell phone in the winter. And because his cell phone or her cell phone broke and she had, they just kept going through phones. And that was a red flag. When he called me out of my name, right? If he's going to do it to her mom, what's he going to do to her? I had a cousin that stayed with her for a few months, and he told me later that he saw bruises on her and then next on her face. And then an hour later, she had put makeup on him and covered him up. I didn't know that until after. I'd met some people out that witnessed him being controlling and verbally abusive to her in a bar, to where you can't be friends with her, or pulling her shirt, we got to go. And this guy got in, no, if she doesn't want to go, then she's not going. He said that they stayed for a little bit and then she ended up leaving with him inevitably.
Right. And I just want to point out, so I can make sure to point it out for the listeners, that kind of thing is a huge red flag. When someone has to step in and defend you from your partner, there's something wrong there. Someone shouldn't have to be defending you from your own partner that is in your home all the time, that you're alone with. That's concerning on its own. And I think young people don't know that necessarily. And one thing that Tamara really wanted me to make clear is that a lot of these things Tamara did not know until after Cyarah was already gone. And, talking to Cyarah's friends and other loved ones, people saying, oh, did you know him? Did you know about this? Did you know about that? And it's when she started gathering all of this information after the fact that it really started to paint this clear picture for her, because she didn't really know him that well. She lived on the other side of the country. At the time. And a lot of people didn't really know him that well just because Cyarah was kind of retreating. They didn't really come around very often. Her family and friends didn't spend a lot of time with Austin. And she just kind of was retreating from these things that she used to do and the people that she used to spend a lot of time with. So yes, there were some vague concerns about, oh, is she sacrificing things for this guy? And then you hear the stories that, oh, she had these bruises and they argued in the bar and I had to step in once and I had to defend her from him once. And then someone else is like, oh yeah, I saw that too. And no one tells these things to Tamara because they're just seeing it one time. And it's just one instance. And those things are very easily written off. And I think fairly so. But it's when people start telling Tamara all of these stories after the fact that it's like, wow, a lot of people saw a lot of different things and a lot of small things. And when you put them all together is when they paint this picture. And do you have any frustration that these things weren't voiced to you sooner from any of these people in their lives? Or did it just seem like, well, separately, they were small enough to where you see why they didn't say these things, but it's when you bring it all together that it becomes concerning?
I think the latter of what you just said, right? I think each person probably thought it was an isolated situation. Until you connect the dots and put it all together, then it shows a pattern.
So her friends and family began to see her less and less as she was spending all of her time with Austin. She wasn't visiting her mother as much because Austin wasn't able to join her on these trips. And even when Tamara came to Ohio to visit, if Cyarah went to go spend the day with her, Austin would call, urging Cyarah to come home. To me, that is delusional, to be jealous and concerned about your girlfriend being away from you all day while she's with her own mother. Like, that is concerning. That shows a level of jealousy of, it's not just about, oh, are you hanging out with boys? Which Cyarah wasn't, hanging out with other guys or anything behind his back. But it's a jealousy of, oh, no one else should be getting your time and attention. That's what it sounds like to me, at least. Now, over time, Austin's control over Cyarah grew, and she became more and more isolated from her loved ones. And Tamara even told me that Cyarah kept having to replace her phones because he was breaking her phones, we believe. And she often had new phone numbers, new cell phones, because you just have to keep replacing them. And the phone thing, I want you guys to remember that throughout this month as I tell you other stories, because in some of the other stories I tell this month, we're going to hear about this phone thing. And I think the breaking of the phone or the taking of the phone or the breaking of the SIM card, whatever it may be, the phone is very symbolic of this item is what I am going to attack because this item is what is used for you to connect with other people. And so to me, someone breaking your phone, whether it's in a moment of rage and fury or it's a moment of whatever it may be, that is a red flag. First of all, it's a red flag for a grown adult to be breaking anything of yours, anything expensive like that out of anger or control or whatever it may be. But to me, the phone is a symbol. And if you are in a relationship and someone breaks your phone, you need to start asking yourself some very serious questions about if you are safe in your relationship. And now, I'm not saying that every relationship where a phone has been broken is abusive, but I am saying that in a lot of abusive relationships, phones are broken, and that should be a major red flag that makes you look deeper. Now, again, Tamara is only seeing pieces and parts of this, and it wasn't just Tamara who saw the changes in her daughter.
She didn't hang out with her friends as much, only if Austin was there. She stopped traveling. She wasn't checking off anything on her bucket list. She just wasn't the same Cyarah.
One of the questions that I asked Tamara was, after the fact, did any of Cyarah's friends share anything with her about things they noticed or what were their impressions of Austin at the time? And her response was really just that there were some people that didn't like him, so then they didn't really spend time with Cyarah and Austin because they didn't want to be around him. And then there were others that were kind of like, yeah, I didn't really like him, but I didn't want to sacrifice my time with her. So yeah, I put up with him because they were kind of like a package deal, basically. But her point was there really was no one who ever said anything like, oh yeah, I remember Austin was such a great guy, right? Like, oh, I'm so shocked that this happened, or I'm so shocked hearing all of these things after the fact, because there was no one that just thought, at the time before Cyarah's death, that he was just this awesome guy. And so I think there were these people that were basically like, you know what, she's with this guy. And so we spend less time together because of him. So I don't really like this guy, but we're going to put up with him to be able to see her, kind of thing. Now, in the weeks preceding Cyarah's murder, friends and family noted that Cyarah might have been thinking about leaving this relationship, or at the very least, it seemed like she was starting to have major concerns about it. Now, while she never really told anyone this verbatim, she had started to share the negatives of her relationship with Austin, with Tamara, and others in her life. And this was something that she didn't do before, where there would be incidents or fights or broken phones, whatever it may be with Austin, and she was always his defender. And by this point, in the weeks leading up to the murder, she was starting to voice her frustration with him. In particular, one conversation that Tamara had with Cyarah about Austin truly sticks out to her.
I feel like she equally stayed because she was so attached to his kids. The second to last conversation I had with her, she was concerned, or she was, I guess, complaining about how he never parented them. She had to parent them, and he never did anything fun with them. She did fun things with them. She colored with them. She played Legos with them. He was always, not available or had something else to do. And she was feeling frustration toward being the only person that parenting. And I told her, I said, Cyarah, I get it. It's hard to dual parent when, they aren't your kids, and it's hard to step parent. But I feel like she equally stayed because she was so attached to his kids, and vice versa. This is just speculation, but I think that she was starting to think that she needed to get out, because she had never told me before that she was the only one who parents and the only one who does anything fun. And that was a big step for her to tell me, because she didn't really talk bad about him to me ever. Mm-hmm. And I think that also might have stirred the pot, because I think that he may have felt it too. I don't know why someone would do that to someone that he says he loves, but that also is a scenario that I think, did he know that she was close to leaving? Did this, anger him? Did this, I don't know.
Now, Thursday, March 26, 2020 began pretty ordinarily for Cyarah Vince. That evening, she made dinner at home, a chicken dish that she was extremely proud of, and she excitedly phoned her mom to talk about how well it turned out.
Then on the 26th, she had called me with a 3-hour time difference. I was actually in a meeting at work. She was the only person that I would ever call back at work, because she was my number one, right? She was my priority, my everything. So as soon as I got out of my work meeting, I called her. It was 4:00 in Seattle, so 7:00 in Ohio. And she was telling me how she just made chicken that night for dinner, and she was so proud of it. And her birthday was in 10 days. And I said, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get home for your birthday, because the flights just got extremely reduced, right? And so I said, I have all intentions of being there. I just don't know if the flights are there for me to go home, because COVID had just kicked in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that's a huge part. They were living through COVID, and for she was waitressing. So I don't know if she had already got let go a week or two
or
before.
The restaurant maybe was not necessarily let go, but there might have been a lack of funds coming in.
Right. So I think, they also may have been stressed about their rent. I don't know, because I don't know why, only speculation, but she said, that's okay, Mom. I said, listen, I have all intentions of being there. I just can't promise. And she's like, that's okay. And I heard him in the background, and she's like, Mom, I gotta go. Austin's in the background saying, come on, get off the phone. And she said, I love you, Mom. And I said, I love you too. And that was the last thing. And then this happened later that night.
I'm so sorry. I'm glad that you guys got to say, I love you during that last conversation.
Me too. I was in Seattle, and there's this hallway that I was walking down when I talked to her, this long hallway that's as long as a concourse, but on the lower level. And every time I call it the Cece hallway, because every time I would walk down there, after it happened, that's where I was the last time I talked to her. And I'm just so glad I called her back. I'm so glad she answered. But when I went there 2 days later, there was a piece of chicken that was still in the oven.
And one of the things that Tamara stressed to me about this last conversation that she had with Cyarah, this last phone call, was it just kind of shows you how Cyarah's life changed after she met Austin, because now he's like rushing her off the phone. And obviously, in hindsight, we know this is the last conversation that she ever gets to have with her mother. And he is rushing her off the phone. It's just an example of the quality time that Cyarah has with her loved ones that Austin is trying to minimize over and over again. And one of the other questions that I asked during our call was how Cyarah had kind of changed from being a teen into going into her early 20s. Like, how did she change over time? And Tamara kind of thought this like phone call was such a good example of that, because she calls her mom so excited that she made this chicken that it turned out so great. And that was kind of one of the ways that she was changing. You know, she was learning to cook, and she was kind of taking care of like all of these domestic tasks in a home that we all have to learn to take care of as we grow older. So she's learning how to cook. She's helping Austin raise his kids. She's trying to be healthy. And these are all just things that like she's kind of conquering and she's very proud of. She's learning how to work on her credit score, and she's just really trying to embrace young adulthood. And I think you see that in this last conversation. You see that in how proud she was of this dinner that she made. And it's just heartbreaking to see her embracing young adulthood like that, and then all of that just being ripped away from her. Now, this would be the last conversation Tamara ever had with her daughter.
Okay, only 10 more presents to wrap. You're almost at the finish line. But first... there, the last one. Enjoy a Coca-Cola for a pause that refreshes.
Ford was built on the belief that the world doesn't get to decide what you're capable of. You do. So ask yourself, can you or can't you? Can you load up a Ford F-150 and build your dream with sweat and steel? Can you chase thrills and conquer curves in a Mustang? Can you take a Bronco to where the map ends and adventure begins? Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Ready, set, Ford.
This episode is brought to you by Greenlight. Get this. Adults with financial literacy skills have 82% more wealth than those who don't. From swimming lessons to piano classes, us parents invest in so many things to enrich our kids' lives. But are we investing in their future financial success? With Greenlight, you can teach your kids financial literacy skills like earning, saving, and investing. And this investment costs less than that after-school treat. Start prioritizing their financial education and future today with a risk-free trial at greenlight.com/Spotify. Greenlight.com/Spotify.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana. In the hours that followed, Cyarah and Austin's apartment would become the scene of a drug-fueled get-together that spiraled into horrific violence. That night, the couple invited a close friend who was later identified in court by his initials JB, so that's what I'm going to refer to him as. And JB was Austin's best friend, but he was also best friends with Cyarah. Like, the way Tamara explained it to me is JB and Cyarah were just as close friends as JB and Austin were, even though Austin was originally friends with him first. They were kind of like a trio. They did a lot together, and Cyarah was very close to JB. Now, the plan, according to JB's testimony, and most of the details of this night that I'm going to tell you are according to his testimony. And the reason that I used his testimony is because he was there. It's outlined in detail in court records that I found. And so I think it's going to be the most detailed version. Whether or not all of this is accurate or true, I cannot vouch for. So according to his testimony, he said that the plan was to, quote, hang out and use psychedelic drugs, end quote. So JB arrived at Cyarah Austin's apartment around 7:30 p.m. And it sounds like there is some debate about who supplied these drugs. I read one report that alleged that JB had brought MDMA, which is like ecstasy pills, and concentrated THC, like I think it's like oils, like a vape type of thing. Now, other reports stated that Austin and Cyarah had some of their own drugs in the house. They supplied LSD tabs and marijuana in leaf form, bud, as the kids might call it. They had bud. Now, I don't know 100% that we can trust the accounts of where the drugs came from, but there were drugs that were found by police. It was evident that they had been using drugs that evening. According to JB, the three friends ate dinner together. They ate that awesome chicken that Cyarah made that she was so proud of, and they smoked some weed together. Then they put on some rave music, and they each took 7 hits of LSD, a very, very, very high dose of the hallucinogen. Now, I want to be clear, and I want to talk about the drugs for a second. There are people who do this regularly and are absolutely fine. And that's why I don't like that this story is often portrayed as like the drugs are at fault for what happened here. There are people out there doing drugs all the time that don't end up murdering their girlfriends. To me, the drugs are not at fault for what happened here. Of course, they didn't help. Did they make this a more dangerous situation? For sure. But don't let it get lost that the drugs didn't kill her. A person did that. A person made a choice to do that. Now, as the LSD began to kick in, the 3 of them start tripping. And JB recalled that both Austin and Cyarah had ingested what he believed was crushed ecstasy powder, like crushed pills or Molly. He says that he didn't partake in this Molly himself. Again, this is all according to him. At first, it was kind of a typical young friends gathering. Like, yeah, they're using a lot of drugs, but they're at home. It's just the 3 of them. You would think that this is like a safer scenario than like using these drugs out and about. But as the night wore on, Austin's behavior grew erratic and paranoid. Again, this is all according to JB. JB testified that Austin began pacing around the apartment with a firearm in his hand once the drugs took effect. Austin owned a Glock 40 caliber semi-automatic pistol, which he retrieved and was like holding in his hand as he's just pacing back and forth. JB noticed that Austin seemed to be agitated and was not responding to attempts at conversation. So they're trying to ask him what's wrong, and he's just ignoring them, pacing with a gun in his hand. My advice at this point in this situation, if you are in this apartment and if you ever find yourself in this situation, no matter if this is a person you love, a person who was not emotionally, physically abusive, doesn't matter if he's your best friend. I personally would advise you guys to run from the house at this point. If someone is using drugs or drinking, actually, even if they're completely sober, they start pacing around the house agitated with a gun in their hand, I really recommend that you run from the house and you call 911 immediately, and you get in a car and drive away, or you get inside a neighbor's house somewhere safe. But for Cyarah, and I understand why she made this choice, and that's why I think I just want people to learn from this decision. But Cyarah is trying to calm Austin down. She's trying to, she's his partner. She's probably the one person on earth that might be able to calm him down. So she led Austin into their bedroom to talk in private, probably trying to calm him down. That's the impression that I got from reading JB's testimony. And JB says that he could overhear a heated argument that ended up taking place between the couple behind the closed doors. However, I wasn't able to find what he thought the argument was about. Now, moments later, Austin came storming back out of the room. As he passed through the living room, Austin made a terrifying gesture. He pressed the muzzle of his gun to JB's forehead for a brief moment as he walked by. Now, he didn't pull the trigger, but this threatening act shocked JB, who froze. Austin then left the living room area. JB wasn't sure where Austin went next, but within seconds, he heard 3 to 4 gunshots erupt elsewhere in the apartment. The sudden gunfire sent the household into chaos. The gunshots were so close and rapid that they even set off the smoke detector in the kitchen, which began blaring. JB ran into the kitchen and frantically disabled the smoke alarm to silence the noise. At this point, fear for his life had set in. So as soon as JB quieted that smoke alarm, Austin returned to the kitchen, still armed, and he yelled at JB, telling him to leave now. But then he immediately became enraged and physically attacked him. In the cramped kitchen, Austin picked up a wooden chair and struck JB with it, and this chair was later found broken in the apartment. He then swung at him with a closed fist. JB grappled with Austin's blows, trying to defend himself. Austin then grabbed a kitchen knife and basically waved it at JB, threatening him with this knife. reiterating that JB needed to get out of the apartment or he was going to be killed. During this scuffle, Cyarah was witnessing it all. And despite her own fear, Cyarah grabbed JB's keys and tossed them to him, and just to help him get out. And this was a courageous thing to do, a brave thing to do. You know, Austin's attacking this guy, her partner's attacking this guy, and she goes against her partner and helps this friend get out. And JB didn't need to be told twice. He fled out the back door of the second-story apartment and ran down the exterior stairs. In his rush, he left his backpack behind, which contained his own personal 9mm handgun. And why these young kids have guns, I don't know. And don't go in the comments all mad about guns and say, well, I'm not even talking about that. What do these kids need pistols for? They don't. They're not hunting with these pistols. I highly doubt that. Why are they carrying them around to their friend's house in backpacks? That's very concerning to me. Now, as JB ran down the stairs, he saw that Austin was following him, still wielding this gun, and fearing that he'd be shot in the back, JB just sprinted as fast as he could to his car. Now, Cyarah, desperate to defuse the situation, leaned out of the living room window, and she shouted after JB.
And Cyarah said out the window, "Sorry, but we love you." And I think that also might have set Austin off. Like, he was just fighting with Austin's best friend, right? But they were fighting for whatever reason. And now Cyarah is saying sorry to him out the window.
Now, this was the very last time that JB saw Cyarah alive. He jumped into his car and sped off from the house. Only a few blocks away, he pulled over, and his heart was pounding. The LSD in his system was making everything feel unreal and crazy. And he realized that he was too impaired and shaken to drive very far. So he stopped in a parking lot and called another friend for help. Why are you calling a friend and not 911? Now, that friend that he called, who was identified in court documents as MW, came to pick him up. And MW later testified that JB was, quote, overwhelmed and stressed, end quote. And that JB started telling them about what happened in these fragmented bursts that didn't fully make sense. They said that Austin had started firing a gun inside the apartment, that things got physical, that Austin chased him out with a knife. And it kind of seemed like JB was in shock, but it sounded like he had barely escaped with his life. Now, back at the apartment on East 29th Street, events took an even more tragic turn. At some point shortly after JB escaped, Austin turned his gun on Cyarah Vince. The exact moment and motive will never be fully known, but the evidence suggests that Cyarah was shot at close range while seated on the living room couch. Cyarah was shot once in the forehead, just left of center. And that just shows you this was not like a stray. It's not like he was just shooting around. This was purposeful. The county coroner later determined that stippling or powder burns around the wound indicated that the gun's muzzle was likely only 1 or 2 feet away from Cyarah when the fatal shot was fired. In other words, she was almost face to face with her killer in that awful moment. Austin would later suggest that he didn't remember killing Cyarah or anything that happened that night. Therefore, he didn't really know why he killed her. It's very convenient to lose your memory like that. Very, very convenient for this kid, apparently. And what I mean by that, in case you didn't get the undertones, I think he's full of shit. So neighbors in the area and one patrolling police officer, they heard the commotion of the gunfire. And around 11:45 p.m., a Lorain police officer on patrol thought that he heard those shots ring out, and he notified dispatch as he drove towards the sound. Multiple 911 calls also began coming in, reporting gunshots. Within minutes, just after midnight on March 27, 2020, officers converged on the location. As the first officer arrived at the house, he encountered an unexpected sight. Austin was already outside, standing in the driveway with no shirt on, hands raised above his head. On the ground next to him lay his Glock 40 caliber handgun and an empty magazine. He was visibly disheveled and in a state of partial undress, but he appeared to be eerily calm. Immediately, he began speaking, blurting out a confession before the officer could even fully assess the scene in front of him. He said, "I just murdered my wife. I just shot my wife." And he said this very matter-of-factly as the officer drew his own weapon and ordered him to step away from the gun. He just repeated himself, "I just shot my wife." It was a stunning and chilling admission. Now, in reality, they weren't married. They were just dating, but I don't know why he called her his wife. Now, the responding officer quickly handcuffed Austin and called for backup. Now, Austin didn't resist the arrest. He seemed eager to talk, as one officer later noted. And within moments, additional Lorain police officers arrived. The murderer was placed in the back of a squad car, and officers cautiously entered the building to check on the reported victim. They climbed to the second-floor apartment, whose door was left open. The scene inside was chaotic and grim. In the kitchen, officers immediately noted evidence of a violent struggle, the broken chair on the floor and various items strewn about. There were bullet holes in the refrigerator and the kitchen wall, and several spent shell casings littered the floor. Moving into the small living room, officers found Cyarah on the couch, exactly where JB last saw her. She had a gunshot wound to her forehead, and she was bleeding profusely. Incredibly, Cyarah was still alive at that point. An officer observed that she was barely breathing with labored, gasping respirations. But the officers couldn't immediately render aid because Cyarah's loyal pet pit bull was apparently curled up in front of her, growling fiercely at anyone who approached, trying to protect Cyarah. And it was a tense standoff for a few moments until one officer was able to coax the dog away and secure the dog in another room. With the dog removed, police and paramedics rushed to Cyarah. They carried Cyarah out of the apartment and into an ambulance. Cyarah was in critical condition, and despite emergency treatment, Cyarah succumbed to her injuries soon after arriving at the hospital. Cyarah had been shot on March 26th, but she was a fighter, and she fought for more than 45 minutes, surviving into the early hours of March 27th before she took her final breath. The promising life of Cyarah, Cece, Vince had been brutally stolen. But I want everyone to remember that Cyarah did not give up. She was a fighter. She fought and battled cancer and won. And she fought this night. She fought until the very last second. And this is something that Tamara expressed the importance of.
It's important to me for a few reasons. The most important is Kelsey, she held on, right? She was still fighting when they got there. They didn't take her to Elyria Memorial. They took her to Lorain Mercy. Elyria Memorial was the morgue, and Mercy was, she was still fighting. And so, to me, that just, tells a lot about her. She wasn't giving up.
Meanwhile, Austin had been taken to the Lorain Police Department for questioning. It was now the middle of the night, but investigators were keen to understand what had happened. Now, the murderer, still under the influence of LSD, you would assume, he nevertheless appeared very lucid and coherent, even though he took so many drugs that he didn't even remember the night, which, again, personally, I do not believe, but that's what he says. That's what he says later. That's not what he says this night. This night, he doesn't really argue. He kind of explains what happened. He is read his Miranda rights at the scene and again at the station. He waived his rights. He agreed to talk. In the interrogation room around 1 a.m., he was rambling and repeatedly incriminating himself. A detective would later testify that during his taped interview, the murderer admitted at least 16 different times that he had shot Cyarah. He showed very little emotion. He was speaking in a calm, almost detached manner. And at points, he seemed to lament what he'd done, referring to Cyarah as his wife and stating flatly that she was gone because he had killed her. But he offered no coherent explanation for his actions. When asked why he killed Cyarah, the murderer would only mention that they had been using LSD that night. So he's already trying to blame this on the drugs. And that is an excuse that none of us should stand for, not only in this case, but in any case. There are people who use drugs all the time and don't kill anyone. And of course, drugs can make situations much more dangerous. And it can make violent people act out. It doesn't make a normal, non-violent person literally murder somebody. At least that is not what happened here. That is not what happened here. And I want you guys to remember that. So he's telling them this. And while he's being interviewed, there's no obvious signs that he's still high or hallucinating. He was calm. He seemed to be very oriented, and he was responsive to all of their questions, which to me seems weird if he had taken 7 hits of LSD like they claimed, because I thought LSD lasted like 12 hours. I don't know, but I just think that's odd. And I don't like this drug excuse. So by daybreak on March 27th, 2020, the Lorain Police Department charged the murderer with Cyarah's murder. He is taken to county jail as the community began to learn of the tragedy. A press release indicated that a young woman had been shot to death in a domestic dispute and that the boyfriend was in custody after making a confession at the scene. Just hours after Tamara had last spoken on the phone with her daughter, her phone rang again.
Yeah, so I worked until I got home around 11:45 from work that night, Seattle time. And so it was almost 3 o'clock in the morning in Ohio, and my phone rings, and my phone was on the charge, and I was like, no one calls me this late. And it was from my cousin's phone number, and I pick up the phone, and I hear her husband say, Tamara, is this you? And I said, yeah. And he was like, someone needs to talk to you. And then another gentleman gets on the phone and says, this is Detective so-and-so from Lorain Police Department. Your daughter's been murdered, and we have, Austin admitted it, and we have him in custody. And I fell to my knees, and it took me a long time to get up. And all I remember saying is, no, not my daughter, no. And that's how I found out, then when I finally, peeled myself off the ground, then we realized that we need to look for flights. It took us many hours to get there because the flights weren't there. And we packed and we stayed up all night, and I made some phone calls, and we made it home the next day.
Part of, what you asked is, how was the process, right? And I think Tamara is super grateful for that call from the detective. It didn't feel great, obviously, when it happened, but it was only, 30 minutes later?
30, and I wasn't even off the floor yet, and someone was pinging me that they heard about my daughter. Is my daughter okay?
And so the thought of hearing about it on Facebook or getting a random phone call or any of that happening before she got official notification just makes the whole thing seem way more devastating than how bad it already is.
And then I wanted to make it home to say goodbye to her, and the coroner talked me out of it, Miller, and he said, Tamara, you don't want to see your daughter, you don't want to remember your daughter like this. And so we were at my cousin's house, all my family, and my cousin also said, Tamara, don't do it. Don't have that last memory of your daughter like that. So it just sucks because I was like, how do you know it's her? And he's like, well, I looked up her Facebook. This is how they're identifying kids these days, is from their pictures on social media. And, but then I read the report, and it does identify her 2 tattoos that she has, and some, characteristics that I knew it was her, but I didn't go see her. And I still have bittersweet about that. I still feel guilty about not going and wondering if that was the best thing for me to do.
The case proceeded very slowly between 2020 and 2021, in part due to pandemic delays in court operations. Finally, in late 2021, about a year and 9 months after Cyarah's death, the murder trial of Austin began in the Lorain County Common Pleas Court. Assistant Prosecutor Chris Pierre led the case for the state, laying out the narrative of this domestic homicide.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kann du Norsk?
If you used Babbel, you would. Babbel's conversation-based techniques teaches you useful words and phrases to get you speaking quickly about the things you actually talk about in the real world, with lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts and voiced by real native speakers. Babbel is like having a private tutor in your pocket. Start speaking with Babbel today. Get up to 55% off your Babbel subscription right now at babbel.com/Spotify. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify. Rules and restrictions may apply.
And I'm going to play a clip for you of what Tamara had to say about this prosecutor, Chris Pierre. But I kind of wanted to say something first and just say, give Chris Pierre his flowers, because you're going to hear Tamara's raving review. This is an amazing man, and this is the type of person that we want working in our criminal justice system and fighting for these victims and these families. And I wish we heard more stories about people like him. So I just wanted to say huzzah to Chris Pierre, and thank you for what you do, and thank you for what you've done for Tamara and everyone who loved Cyarah.
So pretty quickly, the prosecutor's office reached out to me, and he said that, and I feel like I was going through Law and Order by now, right? Because, we're going in detective mode. We went in there, kind of going through stuff. And the prosecutor's office reached out and said, your daughter's, he went to grand jury, I think it's called. And I, pushed the case through. I think we have the right person, but we're still go through the whole investigation. And I'm prosecutor Chris Pierre. And I said to him, well, why do we have the assistant prosecutor? I didn't know that everyone gets an assistant prosecutor, right? Mm-hmm. But he ended up being a big blessing that he had my case. As Kelsey, the time that he took with me answering all my questions, like I would, wake up in the middle of the night and write a question down and toss and turn and just replay things. And what else does the prosecutor need to know? And I talked to him sometimes once a week, sometimes a couple of times a month. And they were like sometimes over an hour. He really listened to all my questions. He told me all the latest things that were going on. He really kept me informed because I lived in Seattle and he knew it, and I did come into town when I needed to. There was supposed to be a trial in May. We came into town and it got postponed because, it was still COVID, social distancing was still in effect. And so there was a lot of postponement, a lot of plea deals that the defendant's lawyer put toward us. I think 2 or 3 times he tried to get a plea deal and we said no deal. We felt like, he admitted it. They had the weapon. So we didn't take a plea.
And I'm glad to hear that, the prosecutors stood by your wishes.
Yeah, he took a lot of time. Like, I don't know how many cases he had at the time, at any particular time, but I really feel like he took the time for Cyarah's case. He really wanted justice. He was very thorough. And when we came in May and they didn't have the trial, he was like, you know what? You came all the way here. Let's go in the conference room. I'm going to show you what evidence I have. I have a few questions. We'll just make this case a little tighter, right? We'll button up some things and make it tighter. But this prosecutor was amazing and really, he took the time to listen to me and he really wanted to get to know who Cyarah was. He had a picture of her on his folder. The first thing that when he opened the folder was her picture. And he really just wanted to get her justice.
Now, the defense, he didn't dispute that Austin was the murderer, that he had fired the fatal shot. But they did suggest that there was more to the story and that doubt remained about his intent and his memory. During the trial, the prosecution presented a parade of witnesses and evidence that methodically established what happened. JB testified at length, giving the jury a vivid play-by-play of that tragic night. I've already told you most of his testimony, but one important thing is that he emphasized that he and Austin never struggled over the gun at any point, which directly refuted any potential self-defense theory of, maybe Austin fired in self-defense and hit Cyarah by accident. JB made it very clear that there was no struggle over this gun, nor did he ever break out his own firearm that was in his backpack that night. And JB was a crucial witness when it came to establishing Austin's aggressive and deliberate actions before the murder. Now, police officers and detectives took the stand, including the first responder who encountered Austin. Now, perhaps most surprisingly, the murderer decided to testify to his own defense. And as we know, this is relatively uncommon for defendants in murder cases, given the risks of cross-examination. But he wanted to give his own version of the story, a version that I do not personally believe. So on the stand, he didn't deny that the shooting occurred, but he claimed to have little to no memory of actually shooting Cyarah due to his intoxicated state. He painted a story in which JB was the instigator. He said that JB had provided the drugs, even though JB said it was Austin who did. And he insinuated that the drugs might have been tainted, that they weren't pure LSD, and maybe he didn't know fully what he was taking. He further alleged that as the LSD took hold, JB became depressed and started talking about killing us and killing himself, end quote, which led Austin to arm himself for protection, he claims. According to Austin, JB was the one acting irrationally, and a physical altercation broke out between the two men over the gun. Austin claimed that during the scuffle, the firearm went off accidentally 1 or more times. He claimed that he did hit JB with the chair, but again suggested that the gun was fired again accidentally in that moment as he was hitting him with the chair. When asked for an explanation of how or why Cyarah was shot, Austin couldn't provide one. He told the jury that he simply didn't remember the moment of the fatal shot. And the most that he said about it was that after JB fled, he assumes, that's the word he used, assumed that he must have gone back inside and discovered Cyarah already wounded or dying. He acknowledged that firing the gun outside at JB or in JB's direction as he fled, because there were shell casings that were found outdoors, so he had to. But regarding Cyarah's death, he professed profound confusion. He guessed that she might have been accidentally hit during the chaos. perhaps when the gun discharged during the struggle. Now, here's the thing. I personally believe that this is all absolute and utter bullshit because remember, there was like a burn wound around the wound in her forehead that the coroner testified meant that the gun was likely 1 to 2 feet away from her when she was shot, and she was shot directly in the forehead. You're telling me that was an accident, that you accidentally shot her directly in the forehead from 1 to 2 feet away? Don't, be for real. You don't think people were going to believe that? No one's falling for that. And don't worry, because the jury didn't fall for it either. It didn't take long for them to reach a verdict. And in December of 2021, after a 2-week trial, the jury found Austin guilty on all counts related to Cyarah's murder. This included the main charge of murder, as well as weapons charges and charges for drug possession. The verdicts brought a measure of justice for Cyarah and family, though no verdict could ever bring Cyarah back. At sentencing, Cyarah's loved ones had the opportunity to address the court. They spoke of who Cyarah was, a loving, compassionate young woman with a bright future ahead of her, and the unfillable void that her death left in their lives. Austin, who I believe was 25 at the time of his sentencing, was finally facing the consequences of his actions. The judge sentenced him to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 20 and a half years, which in practice, this means that he has to serve at least 20.5 years before he can be considered for release. But he may be considered for release at some point. And when I tell you guys that when that 20 and a half year period is up, you are going to hear me arranging a protest and at this parole hearing, because in my opinion, 20 and a half years is not nearly enough. He took away the rest of Cyarah's life. I want him to spend the rest of his life in prison. I don't want him to see a free day ever again. Now, in the months and years after Cyarah's murder, her family and friends have worked to ensure that she is remembered, not for how she died, but for how she lived. Cyarah's mother, Tamara, channeled her grief into advocacy. She founded the Cyarah Vince Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to raising awareness about domestic violence and helping young people recognize the signs of abusive relationships.
So we started, my best friends and I, there's 6 of us, we started the Cyarah Vince Foundation to honor Cyarah, to give back to the community, to bring awareness to different organizations. So the Cyarah Vince mission statement is to bring change and awareness to Lorain County communities regarding domestic violence through support of foundations, organization partnerships, and other community involvement. And what we do is we hold an annual benefit in April around her birthday. Her birthday was April 7th. So it's always around that date. At this benefit, we have speakers. We have Lorain County Safe Harbor there. We have some baskets that we raffle off. And we have pamphlets and reading material for folks. We've gotten really good feedback, some good take-home stories of, because of what I heard at your benefit, I went home and left my own unhealthy relationship. I took your reading material home and went out to dinner with my daughter the next weekend, and I gave her the reading material, and I'm now moving her out of her abusive relationship. We are making a difference one story at a time, and I just really want to continue to get her story out there to change the outcome of other people's lives so they don't end up in a situation like Cyarah.
Yeah, and what you said about, one story at a time that's one story is everything to that one person. And you don't know, that might have saved their life.
Exactly.
And
we're hearing that.
Oh my gosh,
we're hearing those stories. Every year we hear stories that come back that say, because of your event, because we heard you speak or your speaker speak or the information that we took home, we're making a difference one story at a time. And that's really what it's about, is to change the outcome of other women. Because maybe if Cyarah would have went to this event, right? She would have saw the pamphlets and heard the stories, and I could have been moving her out of her relationship. We also do a free cookout in the park every year. We started a scholarship at Midview High School in her honor, and what we ask the kids to do is to write an essay of what is a healthy relationship, and what would you do if you knew someone wasn't in a healthy relationship? And, just really getting these kids to think about what it means to them, and get their head going, because they're gonna, maybe they'll recognize the signs in their own relationship, or they can use those skills that they learned writing this essay in future relationships.
I think that is such a great way to educate people, is to making them write this essay forces them to think critically about it. It's not just a quiz or a simple question. They're sitting down, they're thinking about it for multiple days and, working on putting this together and really thinking through the details of what that means. And I think that is just such a creative way to educate young people on this topic. And I think it's such a great idea. And, maybe some of our listeners, if anyone's a teacher, anything like that, I highly recommend that they maybe introduce something like that into their classroom, if they can tie it into their material or whatever they're teaching.
I feel like healthy relationships are talked about enough, or what an unhealthy relationship. Domestic violence is something that's not talked about enough. And that's another reason why we started this foundation, to bring awareness, to talk about it, to get people thinking, what is a healthy relationship and what can I do if I'm not in a healthy relationship?
Tamara often shares Cyarah's story at community events, emphasizing that if this could happen to her daughter, it could happen to anyone. On the foundation's website, Tamara wrote, quote, "We need to educate all age groups, especially middle and high schoolers, on the signs of abusive relationships and that there is a way out," end quote. And this is a heartfelt mission born from an unimaginable loss. I asked Tamara what she wanted young women to learn from her daughter's story. And the main point that she wanted to hammer home is that her daughter did not see this coming. Yes, there were signs that Austin was controlling, that he was likely manipulative and emotionally abusive. And there were some signs that pointed to possible physical abuse as well. But her daughter never thought that this person that she loved would kill her. She never saw this coming, and you might not either. We like to think of these stories as things that happen to other people, but won't happen to us. And what Tamara wants you to know is that it can happen to you, and you might not see it coming. And so these little signs that seem small, they add up to a big warning.
You learn what a healthy relationship is, right? And to recognize when you find yourself in an unhealthy relationship, and to know it's okay to reach out to your friends and that you might need help getting out, and look where your resources are, and know that you aren't alone, and know that you deserve to be treated better. And you should never be in a relationship where you feel alone, where you feel isolated, where you feel that it's normal for name calling or, physical or mental, like it's not normal. And I think a lot of men and women out there, right? Because it's not just women, stay because they think they deserve it. They think it's normal. They don't know how to get out. And there's hope. And this can happen to you. If it can happen to Cyarah, it can happen to you, because I can tell you, Cyarah did not see this coming. And, I don't want to speak for her, but I'm sure she thought that she could change him, or that this would never happen, but it did. And I just want people to hear her story and know that there's hope, and to know the signs of a unhealthy relationship, because the signs were there looking back.
And looking back, what are those signs for you that you think maybe people didn't realize how serious they were at the time?
The signs were that he isolated her from her friends. She kept going through different cell phones and cell phone numbers because they were getting broken. That when I was in town, she was limited to how much time she could stay with, hang out with me. He really just isolated her, and he called her out of her name. They might sound small, but you add them all together and, you got an unhealthy relationship there.
With that, is there anything that you hope that the listeners can take from Cyarah's story before this relationship. Anything that she was doing to make the world a better place or make her family or her friends happier, to bring people joy that maybe the listeners can carry on and think about Cyarah when they do it.
I think that Cyarah loved to make people smile and laugh and bring joy. She loved to brighten their day. She really just was so full of joy, and she really loved life, before this happened. Kelsey, I didn't realize until one of my nieces put this together for me, but I probably have like 20 or 30 photos of Cyarah with her arms up like this.
Like a Y shape.
At the Grand Canyon, at the Golden Gate Bridge, at so many places around the world and country. And that just says she loved life. She just really loved exploring and taking it in and bringing joy to people.
I also wanted to insert some of my final thoughts on this story. And I think Tamara's emphasis on the fact that Cyarah didn't see this coming is so important. We've told a lot of stories in the past of murders or attempted murders where there was no physical abuse. Before someone was killed by their partner or before their partner tried to kill them, we hear a lot of stories where there was no physical violence leading up to that. And these women didn't see these things coming. The one that always comes to mind for me is Victoria Cillier. If you haven't heard our episodes on Victoria's story, we covered her case in episodes 50 and 51. Victoria Cillier was in a financially and emotionally abusive relationship with her husband for years. And they had kids together, and so she stayed. And she was always trying to make their relationship better. And while she knew her husband treated her like shit, she knew this, he had never laid a hand on her. He had never physically abused her until the day he tampered with her parachute before she went skydiving, and she fell 4,000 feet to the ground, reaching a top speed of an estimated 65 miles per hour, and hit the ground. And she survived this, and she lived to tell this story. And that is the biggest thing I learned from her story is just because there's no physical abuse doesn't mean you are not in danger. And while we don't know for sure in Cyarah's story, like Tamara explained, there were some people who said that they had seen bruises on Cyarah's face. So we don't know for sure. It's possible that there was physical abuse, but it's also possible there wasn't. Either way, I don't think she saw this coming. And I want that to stick with you guys, because oftentimes we think of these dangerous relationships as these women are terrified. They know what's coming. They're scared. They're seeking help. They're filing restraining orders. They're all of these things. And we're going to tell another story next week where that was the case. And next week's story is the story of Tiana Notice, who asked police for help 33 times before her ex-boyfriend, who was stalking and harassing her, murdered her. And it's a story that'll shake you. But I want you guys to remember that while Tiana knew she was in danger and she was just asking for help that she was not getting, many women who are killed by their abusers did not know that they were in danger. So I want that to stick with you guys. Another thing that has stuck with me throughout the story is Tamara and just her love for her daughter and the relationship they had together.
But one thing I took away from that, Kelsey, is we have the time on earth is like seconds compared to eternity in heaven. And so until I see her again, I'm just going to keep sharing her story and trying to change someone's outcome one person at a time.
There were so many things that Tamara told me about. And again, we talked for 3 hours, so I wish I could play it all for you guys. But just so many thoughtful, sweet things that Cyarah did for her mother that I'm like, I need to start doing these things for my mom. Like the little handwritten cards and all of that. And just the way that they really, truly reminded each other how much they loved one another. And that has really, really stuck with me. And I think is something for all, mothers and daughters and kids to aspire to have that type of relationship with their parents. I want to wrap it all up with one more thing is Tamara and Catherine's relationship has really touched me. Talking to them together about something so tragic and so difficult and the worst time in their lives that they've ever experienced, and seeing them just support each other through this conversation and talk about how they've supported each other over the years is really incredible. You can just feel the love between them. You can feel the love that they have for Cyarah. You can feel the love and the passion they have for the foundation and their mission. And they're trying to save lives. And what I want to remind you guys is that Tamara was once in an abusive relationship that she got out of. And now she's with Catherine, and she has this loving, supportive, caring partner who has supported her through the worst time in her life. And I want that to be a reminder to anyone who may be experiencing domestic violence or an emotionally abusive or financially abusive relationship, that you can get out. There is hope. You can get out, and you can have a relationship like Tamara and Catherine have, one that is loving and supportive, one that is healing, and one that does not hurt. Now, with that, I do want to remind anyone listening, if you are going through anything that makes you think you need to leave your relationship, I really highly advise that you create an action plan. Leaving is statistically the most dangerous time, even if there has been no physical abuse in the past. And I am not the best person to educate you all on how to leave safely, but I know there are tons of resources online. I highly recommend going to resources.spotify.com. You can find some resources there, and I am going to interview an expert on the podcast. I don't know exactly when that will come out, but that's what that interview is going to focus on, is some of these questions about how can someone leave an abusive relationship safely? How can we help one of our friends if we see them in a possibly abusive situation? All of those sorts of things, because I never want to give you incorrect advice. So that's why I'm leaving it at that for now, because I am not the best person to educate on this topic, but I am here to share the stories.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here, wishing you a very happy half-off holiday, because right now Mint Mobile is offering you the gift of 50% off unlimited. To be clear, that's half price, not half the service. And Mint is still premium unlimited wireless for a great price. So that means a half day, yeah? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
And I just want to say thank you so much to Tamara for sharing Cyarah's story. I truly believe that they are going to save lives with their foundation. They've already gotten people reaching out to them saying that, attending one of their events made them realize that they needed to leave this relationship, or it gave them the vocabulary and the information that they needed to talk to, one of their friends or one of their children or one of their loved ones about that person's relationship, and inspiring them to leave and educating them on how to do it safely. So I always come back to this quote, and I think I will forever. I think I might get this tattooed on me, but the quote that I shared in the Chanel Miller case, Chanel Miller actually quoted this quote in her book, and it's from another author, Anne Lamott. And that quote is, "Lighthouses don't go running all over an island looking for boats to save. They just stand there shining." And I think by sharing Cyarah's story, Tamara and everyone involved in the foundation, because I want to give credit where credit is due, they are all lighthouses, and they are allowing Cyarah's memory to be a lighthouse, to stand there shining and reminding people that it doesn't have to turn out this way, and educating them on the warning signs that are sometimes subtle and sometimes small and not obvious. So thank you to Tamara for speaking with me, for being lighthouses, and for sharing Cyarah's story. Also, just to end the episode, I wanted to share 2 websites I found while I was doing research for this episode. If you are ever dating someone new, I think you can use these websites to kind of look up if they have a record. There's courtrec.com, and then there's also domesticviolencedatabase.net, which contains information about people convicted of domestic violence charges. So I think those are 2 great resources. And even if you meet a guy and you're like, this is the nicest man on planet Earth, I do recommend Googling them and looking up and making sure that they don't have a record, because remember, some of these monsters present themselves as princes and princesses, because reminder, women are not the only victims of domestic violence. This happens to men too. And we are going to tell a story later this month of a male survivor of domestic violence, and it is a gut-wrenching story. So if there are any men listening there, I know that I've been talking a lot about women, but just know that there are resources out there for you as well. And just know that we are recognizing, and I think the true crime world in general is recognizing that, is trying to bring light to the fact that men experience these too, even in heterosexual relationships, abuse from women as well. So anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. This is the type of episode that is very meaningful to me, and this is why I want to do the podcast. And what we're doing this month, fundraising for the Cyarah Vince Foundation, this is why I want to do the podcast. So just a reminder to listen to the episodes this month, because if you listen in January, I can't continue it on and I can't tell where the ad revenue is coming from, like per episode or anything. So listen to all the episodes this month if you can. I know it's busy with the holidays. Let a couple extra ads play through. If you have some extra money and you want to support the foundation, the link is in the show notes. Or you can buy some merch as a gift for someone. That's going to support the foundation. Whatever you can do. You know, you don't need to spend a ton of money if you can't, but it's much appreciated. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to do something like this. So for the day, court is adjourned.